What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and you're tapped into Oh, Have Y'all Seen? Now, I haven't done one of these since Chimp Crazy, and that was a wild ride. And this one was pretty interesting too. So, in this installment of Oh, Have Y'all Seen? We'll be talking about one of Netflix's newest documentary called Don't Die, The Man Who Wants to Live Forever. And it was interesting. That's why we're talking about it. So let's get into the video. Let's talk about it. So the documentary again is called "Don't Die: The Man Who Wants to Live Forever." It's an hour and 29 minutes long, and it's located on Netflix. So the premise of this whole entire documentary is following the life and pretty much routine of Bryan Johnson, who is a millionaire who coined, I guess, the slogan "Don't Die." That is what his community knows him by, as well as another project that he does called The Blueprint. And Bryan's whole thing is he believes that the human race is just accepting death instead of having an opposing spirit of realizing that death is not inevitable. It actually can be avoided, and we can add more years to our life. So throughout the documentary, we see Bryan trying different types of pills and therapy and working. It was a lot, and it was a lot, but we gonna talk about it, and I got notes, so let's talk about it. So like I said, Bryan feels as though people are just accepting death when we really don't have to. And I think the documentary did a good job in the sense of making me question, is Bryan really wrong for having that mindset? Okay. Or is he a scammer? Is he a charlatan? You know what I mean? Because in my mind, I'm like, is immortality bad? I have never been someone who has been interested in immortality. I think the only time where that pops into my mind is I always wanted to see like what the world would be like 300 or 400 or 1,000 years from now. Like, one of the things that I always thought was cool that I like, even when I was little, I thought could be a possibility, and maybe it could be like in the Star Trek world where you have aliens living on Earth and humans living on other worlds, but it's like interstellar travel is very like, it's like getting on a bus or getting on a plane, kind of like the way Futurama is. Like, I've always thought like if that has ever like or will happen to us, I would like to see it and experience it. But other than that, like being here forever has never been like appealing to me in that way, you know? So throughout the documentary, I just started to think about those things. All right, y'all. So the documentary really starts to open up when we visit Bryan in his LA home. He is working out, letting us know that he works out at least an hour every single day. They do like a montage of Bryan from like being a teenager all the way to like young adulthood. They never said his age, or if they did, I never caught it. But I did Google, and currently Bryan is 47, which means probably when they filmed this, probably a year or two ago, he was probably either 45 or 46. So Bryan is, working out and explaining why he is pretty much obsessed with this lifestyle, and how in the beginning it was more so about like him losing weight and maintaining a healthy lifestyle to a certain extent, where they show us this montage of when he was a lot younger that he was overweight, and even it seems like into like his college age years to around that time he kind of like started to lose weight, but he didn't have the physique that he has now at the age of like 45 or 46. So we see this video of him just, at the grocery store getting groceries, but he said, at that time he wasn't really understanding how far he could take this method. That's when he ended up meeting Dr. Oliver Zolliman, and he's coined a longevity consultant, and basically he has done research on ways to prolong someone's life. So he has this 3-level like program, and the first level is Zolliman's longevity level 1, therapies that stack up to 30 years of longevity. So basically having good sleep, not smoking adds like 12 years, you know, exercising at least 6 hours out of the week gives you like 8 years. So those types of things. Then level 2 is non-age related interventions. So pretty much environmental exposure, such as like the air and animals and what you do for a living, you know, sexual health, problem solving abilities. Like it adds more to your life, or it could take away from your life depending on what kind of environment that you put yourself in. And then the last level, which is the level that Bryan is on, is longevity level 3, age causing reversal. So this one gets more to like a cellular level where it talks about your organs. So when Bryan ended up meeting Dr. Oliver Zolliman, he pretty much started to take on Zolliman's idea of saying that we should be looking at our health based off of our organs. How does your colon look? What does your colon need? What does your heart need? What does your lung need? What does your liver and spleen? Instead of just thinking it from the mindset of like overall health, in a sense, I guess they're saying you should target these organs specifically to what they need for it to combine all together. After Bryan and Dr. Zolliman connect, it seems like Bryan feels like he hit like the mother load, in a sense, because now he has someone who is helping him as well as someone that believes in what he believes in as well. So Zolliman even says that Bryan is his guinea pig, and Bryan, I don't think, takes offense to that. He actually like revels in that he's like the new person to try all of these things. But he does 100 different things daily. He wakes up at 4 a.m. in the morning. He works out an hour every single day. He eats up to at least, I think, well over 2,000 calories, because the amount of food that they showed us that he eats, I was like, that's a lot. That's a lot. On top of that, he ingests up to like 130 pills a day, like 40, I think it was like 56 in the morning or 54 in the morning. And then in the afternoon, like 34 in the afternoon. He also drinks this green juice, which is supposed to be like an immune booster. He does HRV therapy, which is supposed to activate your autonomic nervous system. He also does this in conjunction with his workout, this machine that he puts on his stomach that is supposed to contract your muscles in a way where it stimulates that you have done basically 20,000 sit-ups if you do it in 30 minutes. If you do this one sitting in 30 minutes. He also gets MRIs. He does penis shockwave therapy. I don't know why. He does joint rejuvenation. I think it was thymus rejuvenation. Yeah, it was thymus rejuvenation, penis shockwave therapy, ultrasound, whole body, joint stem cell rejuvenation, whole body MRI, 30K swallowable bowel images. Okay. He does, I think it's called spirotomy lung, inhales lung stelliosis. He does a lot of stuff. And this is a protocol that he gladly will encourage anybody else to do, because he believes that this is all a benefit to everyone. He also has a really long nighttime routine as well. And ultimately, this is all so that Bryan can reverse the aging process. So they do show us that when he started the blueprint in the beginning, Bryan was at a 1.03. Now, after doing the blueprint for 2 years, he is at a 0.69. What Bryan is trying to explain to us with the whole number is that he has slowed down his rate of aging. So basically, he said for every 12 months, he ages only every 8 months. So he's basically saying he has slowed down the aging process. We then get introduced to Kate, who's supposed to be like his chief manager, but I felt like there was something else going on between them, but I'm going to keep it in my head because I was like, y'all doing something. I don't know if it's managing, okay? But basically, we see Kate helping Bryan create this video that he's going to upload on his social media, where he is happily like boasting about how he got the perfect sleep and he's had it for the past 30 days and wants to share these tips to his followers. Kate basically says that when she met Bryan, she wasn't living a healthy lifestyle, that she was going to McDonald's, going, fast food joints. But after meeting him, it made her question, like, is she taking care of herself? Like, is she doing a disservice to her future self by not taking care of the body that she has now? And ultimately, she felt like she was. So that's when the blueprint started to really take off for Bryan. So Bryan created the blueprint and he pretty much wanted help with getting out his message to the people. And it really wasn't going the way that he wanted. But after meeting Kate, Kate pretty much says, why don't we put all this information on the internet? Why don't we publish all of your biometrics, like all of your lab results, your medical history, and put the information out there? It will probably bring more eyes to you, which would get you more help with furthering your passion and your goal. So that's when we end up meeting Ashley, who is a journalist who has been following Bryan for a long time, and they have some type of relationship. I don't think they would be considered friends, but they have a rapport with each other. And Ashley ended up saying that, when I first heard about him, I was kind of thrown off. Like, here's this guy who spent over $2.5 million in this, trying to live this lifestyle. And it's like, this is a tech guy. Like, why are we doing this? You know what I'm saying? But after getting to know him, then my perception of him began to change. So we go back to Kate and Bryan, and they start talking about like the day that they saw the articles about him and his lifestyle being uploaded onto the internet. And how they both kind of went into panic mode because it's like, are we really doing this? Are we really about to put all of my medical history out there? Like what the inside of my colon looks like the money that I'm putting out here and everything. Like, are we really gonna do this? And they both were like, yeah. And we did. And in the beginning, they had positivity, but then it was riddled with a lot of anger and a lot of hate and people being turned off or creeped out by what Bryan was doing. And I remember that. They actually show a montage of all the articles that came out, as well as people who tweeted about it saying, like, this is rich people's problems, like he's trying to play God. Like, really, what is this man really, like, what is his ultimate goal? Is it truly immortality? Like, the vibes of this are unsettling. The documentary continues. We end up meeting at least, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 different researchers, scientists that are proficient or working in the field of anti-aging. One doctor we meet, his name is Dr. Andrew Steele, is a scientist and author. We meet another one, Dr. Matt, who is a professor of pathology at the University of Washington. We meet Dr. I think I'm going to just call him Pedro because I know I'm going to butcher his name, but I recognize the word Pedro, okay? He is a professor of molecular biochronology at the University of Birmingham. And then we also meet Dr. Bryan, who is a professor of biochemistry and physiology at the National University of Singapore, and Dr. Andrea, who is a professor of medicine at the National University of Singapore as well. And pretty much they all give their take about Bryan, or really about anti-aging science. They talk about how the leading cause of death is not like cancer or anything, it's aging, and how the older you get, you're more susceptible to different diseases such as Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, or chronic illnesses. And they believe that with the research of anti-aging, that we can find cures and help those who are suffering from these ailments. They are a little bit different when it comes to their philosophy. I believe they gave more of like realistic approaches. That's not a word, Leah. Approaches. That's the word. Approaches to this whole like anti-aging like topic, because from Bryan's standpoint, it does give me a little like Orochimaru energy, like you're obsessed with immortality more than you're obsessed with like health, where it seems like these researchers and these scientists are really obsessed with finding cures to things and giving people the ability to live longer and healthier. I don't negate that that's what Bryan wants to do, but there's something about Bryan that's unsettling, which gives me pause when it comes to the things that he is talking about. We get away from the researchers and the scientists and we go back to Bryan. And Bryan is butt booty ball naked doing a photo shoot in his kitchen. And that's when we actually get introduced to his son, Talman, who just in there trying to get his cereal, just like, oh, so this what you doing today? And Bryan even makes a comment where he's like, I feel bad for him because every day is something different and he don't know what he gonna get. So then we get this montage of Bryan talking on like podcasters and influencers and YouTubers coming to his house to like film content with him to try to understand this don't die blueprint lifestyle. And it was interesting, especially when Bryan ends up saying, let me find it, I'm benefiting from decades of progress. And like, it's interesting because it's like, as someone who understands research, it's like, how many decades? Because when I was taught that most of the medication that is available to us, like Tylenol, ibuprofen, Excedrin, aspirin, and all of that stuff, like those drugs have been researched on for decades. Like, I mean, like 30 and 40 plus years. So when someone says decades, I'm like, are you talking about 20 or 10? Like, has it really been researched upon? Because the issue is that research, or not research, but science and research is forever changing. And it's going at such a fast pace that something that you learned a year ago could contradict what we know now. So I'm just like, are you truly benefiting from the things that you are doing? Or is it giving you like this false sense of like reassurance? Because do you truly know that like not smoking and I mean, like, we know smoking kills, but there's people who have been smoking a pack of menthols for like 40 and 50 years and they still here, versus somebody who runs and works out every single day and they die from like a heart attack. Like, do you really know that the stuff that you're doing is beneficial or helpful? But we meet his son, Talman. He's like maybe 17 or 18 years old, because throughout the documentary, we actually see Bryan dealing with the fact that his son is about to go to college. So the documentary continues. We end up seeing, Bryan go through his montage, waking up, eating healthy, popping all them pills. And mind you, while he's doing all of this, all I can think in my mind is like, bro, this too much. This too much. Like, I'm not taking over 100 pills a day every single day. I just started taking vitamins because my doctor told me I needed to. I just started doing that. And even I forget. And they're gummies. They're gummy vitamins. So I cannot see myself ingesting 50-something pills in the morning and then in the afternoon taking another 50 pills. I couldn't do it. I can't do it. Like, let me die then, because I can't do it, all right? So we then start seeing Bryan do these podcasts, and we see one of the podcasts that he's doing where he is talking to someone. They don't even give this person a name, but this guy is talking about how, we all know that smoking can lessen your life. Like, we all know that you stop smoking, it can increase your life, but people's mindsets are very like stuck in what they want to do. And so Bryan ends up saying on the podcast, the mind is dead. And the only reason that people get upset or angry when you tell them that their mind is dead and that, like, you can't eat certain things, and like how people are like, well, if I can't eat what I want, that I don't want to do it. He's like, that is your brain being angry at the fact that you're questioning its authority. So that one soundbite got Bryan a lot of heat, where one guy was like, what is he talking about? Your mind being dead? Like, do y'all hear what he's saying? And you people are actually following this man? Bryan goes on to say, you can't trust your mind. It's lost touch with basic self-care. He was like, fight for yourself with yourself. And pretty much he says, like, once he allowed his mind to go dormant, it allowed him to liberate his body, especially around a time where he was desperate to free himself. So to me, I feel like Bryan is like suffering for some mental situations, because anytime I hear someone say they were desperate to free themselves from themselves, makes me feel like you are somebody that is really heavily with like a lot of like negative self thoughts or negative talks to yourself, or you're somebody that is riddled with depression or anxiety. Because why would you want to get away from yourself? That thing. I do agree to a certain extent where in the documentary he talks about how, we are being pulled every which way with all the different algorithms that are out there, whether you're always on Instagram or TikTok or on Twitter or on Facebook, even YouTube. It's like it pulls you. So I am of the belief that you should take breaks. There's been plenty of times where I just won't get on social media for like a week or 2 weeks and then come back when I feel better. But I can understand how social media does cause one to be sad. Every time you get on there, there's a bad story, there's something stupid happening. Or you're comparing yourself to other people. But I do think that's when mental health comes into play, where you have to also work on that, building that mental fortitude where you don't allow yourself to succumb to comparing yourself to that negative self-talk. And if not being on social media helps you with that, then that's a positive. You know what I'm saying? So it continues with us meeting Bryan's parents, Ellen and Richard. And we find out that Bryan grew up poor, but he was always the type of person that wanted to fix things and help everybody. And the mom even gives an example of where Bryan forego getting lunch at school in order to like give his parents his lunch money. We then start to understand how Bryan became a millionaire. He said, as an entrepreneur, he really wasn't afraid of failing because he failed a lot. He started this company called the Bryan Tree, where he actually got really interested in payment plans. He ends up explaining that he actually bought Venmo, which I was like, oh, you did? Okay. And that was going great for him up until a certain extent to where he became overwhelmed, overworked, and stressed. And it started to bleed into his lifestyle with his wife and kids, where he would come home with an attitude or not having the capacity to deal with them because he was overworked and tired. And he was basically irritated and kind of saw what's the word I want to use? The stupidness or the stupidity in working yourself to death. And saying how, I would go to seminars and talk about how, like, I haven't gotten 12 hours of sleep or anything of this. And everyone would clap and cheer me on, all the while I'm breaking down inside. And people were championing that. And it's like, why is that? Like, that makes no sense to me. And then, like I said, that energy was bleeding into his marriage. We also find out that Bryan is Mormon, or was Mormon during that time of his life. He got married when he was 24. That was his first ever girlfriend. And he started to, they started having kids, but then he started having doubts in the church, where he was like, I would go to church on Sunday and question everything, and it would make me physically sick. And this is a religion that I was born into and that I grew up in. So I said, it's always something. The Mormon church be linked to a lot of things, all right? It seems like Bryan was becoming more and more depressed as he questioned his religion, and he even became like suicidal as things progressed. He would really like judge himself because he couldn't accept what was being taught to him anymore. So there came a point where he just said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So he sold his company, he left his religion, and he divorced his wife. And he says that was a really hard thing for him to do because in the Mormon faith, family is very much key. And him breaking away from the religion pretty much made him like an outcast to all of those that were in his family, even to his children. So he lost a lot of things once he left the religion and once he divorced his wife. So that comes Talman. Talman even talks about when at a young age, when his father divorced his mom, he even felt like his dad was going down a wrong path at the age of 8 years old, because in the faith, that is what he was taught. But then we start to realize as Talman began to get older, he started to question his faith as well. There was a scene in the documentary where he's showing this book that it was like Trust God, and it was like a notebook. And he just talked about how while everybody was at this summer camp, just talking about their feelings about faith and how they felt the spirit, I'm over here questioning everything that's being taught to me, feeling alone, like I can't speak or talk to anybody. So then he decided to reach out to his dad. He started to be more open to his dad instead of being closed off. And then he, before his final year of high school, decided to come move to LA to live with his father, because it seemed like Bryan was the only person that could understand the things that Talman was going through as he was questioning his faith, whereas it seemed like everybody else was telling him not to question. I think it was good to see Bryan with Talman because it humanized him in a way, but he's still weird. He is still weird. He's still giving me anime villain. Okay, he is still giving me that. He's giving me Orochimaru and Shao Tucker, because the way that Bryan was like looking at Talman while they were working out and it was like, oh, I wish I had your legs. I was like, okay, that's not an uncommon thing for people to say. But then to feed in Oliver saying that, yeah, Bryan does wish that he had Talman's like body or physique and he's trying to regress to like that body type is weird. I think it's wonderful that Talman had his father here in order to help him navigate his feelings through him questioning his faith and, you know, working out those feelings. But there's still something weird and off about Bryan. We then have this scene of Talman and Bryan talking about how much pills they have taken in a day. And Talman is shocked because his dad is taking 130 and he's only taking 26. And I said, 26 is too much for me. Okay, too much for me. So then we find out that Bryan is doing erythromycin therapy. And if you don't know, erythromycin is a drug that suppresses your immune system. And it is oftentimes always given to organ transplant patients. So because your body is getting a new organ, but it's not from your body, your immune system will oftentimes attack it because it's seen as a foreign object or a foreign substance in your body. Taking erythromycin lessens, you know, your immune system to fight back so that it becomes more compatible. And I don't know how long you're supposed to take it, but I think you're supposed to take it for like maybe I'll find some research on it. If I find out how long you're supposed to take it, I'll put it on the board. Not on the board, but on the screen. This doctor named Dr. Vadman, who is a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. And I liked him because when they asked him about Bryan, all he did was laugh. He just said, like, you know, he wanted to say something disrespectful, but he didn't. He kept it cute. And he basically says the erythromycin therapy doesn't make sense because he was like, there's really no concrete research that it does have longevity benefits. Pretty much Bryan saw a case study or a experiment done on rats who were given erythromycin and it increased their longevity by 30%. And more times than not, a lot of the therapy that is dangerous that Bryan is doing has only been tested in rats, which I'm just kind of like, rats only live for 2 to 3 years. So increasing their longevity by 30% maybe means you're giving them 3 months, maybe more to live. I don't know what that translates into human years, but it's not enough research. And Dr. Vidman was basically saying that, yeah, like it's not enough research for him to be doing that. It's actually very dangerous. Because of him doing erythromycin, it leaves Bryan more susceptible to bacterial infections like pneumonia and cellulosis. So everyone's pretty much very worried about him. We then start to go back to the researchers who start to talk about Bryan. One of the researchers, Dr. Matt, ends up saying that a lot of the things that Bryan is doing, there's no scientific like method behind it. Mainly because he's the only person doing it, it's not very viable for the scientific field. Because in science, in order for a experiment or a method to be viable, you have to be able to recreate that experiment over and over and over and get the same results or similar results. And with Bryan's being that he's the only person doing all of these different therapies, there's no way of determining whether or not what he's doing is helpful. He's also not doing these different therapies isolated. He's doing everything all at once. We also find out that Bryan blocked Dr. Andrew, because Dr. Andrew suggested that Bryan put his money into the anti-aging research so that they could have more clinical trials that could be pushed for scientific purposes. And Andrew says, I don't think he liked the fact that I was telling him where to put his money, but he definitely blocked me on Twitter. At this point in the documentary, we start to see the tides kind of change, where now the scientists that we're meeting are saying how, like, a lot of Bryan's contributions aren't scientific. It's great that he's bringing awareness to this science of anti-aging, but a lot of the things that he's talking about is not really based in anything that can be tested. So a lot of the scientists feel like Bryan is more into raising his social profile and his status more than actually helping people further their health. We also start to see a lot of YouTube videos and TikTokers and influencers talking about Bryan, but very negatively, saying that he's a charlatan, he's a snake oil salesman. It seems like he's just someone that's trying to get rich. And being that he's already gotten rich based off of what he did earlier on in his career, this seems like another investment for him. And they talk about this olive oil that he's selling that's supposed to be extra organic. We see a montage of different people trying it and saying that it's, one person was like, girl, it's just basic olive oil. You can go get that at the Walmart or your local Trader Joe's. Then another person was like, girl, this stuff tastes nasty. I don't know what he put in it, but that's not no olive oil. So that's when the whole snake oil salesman thing started to come around. We then see Ashlyn again, where he talks about how, he doesn't think that Bryan set out to garner such a big fan base and a following, but he definitely can tell that he does enjoy the fanfare that's around him for being the guy who is trying to retain his youth, gain immortality, have this blueprint situation, and the whole don't die. A lot of people bring up how when you go on his website, you can click on some of the things that he is selling, and it's all affiliated links that send you to Amazon, which pretty much ends up giving him a portion of the proceeds of when you buy things. So a lot of people are just how much is he really believing in this lifestyle of don't die? And so Ashlyn pretty much says how he believes that he is doing this for the right reasons, but it also does kind of make you feel like there might be a mental health issue there. Ashlyn also expresses how, after following Bryan for so long, it does feel like he does live a very isolating lifestyle. And is he really gaining anything from scene of Bryan really grappling with the fact that Talman is about to go to college? We end up finding out that he chooses to go to the University of Chicago. And Bryan is seeing it as a loss, but Talman is seeing it as a gain, to start really living his life. He's no longer affiliated with the Mormon church. It doesn't really seem like he might have issues with his siblings and his mom, but he's just I'm ready to live my life. And you see Bryan struggling with the fact that his son is about to leave, but because before his son came into his life, Bryan was living a very isolated lifestyle where it was just him doing those rituals, those 100 things every single day, and then bam, here comes Talman, and now he's doing those rituals, but it's around his son. And his son is a part of it. So now it's about to go back to him being by himself, and he's having a hard time dealing with that. And I think really what this is for Bryan might be a way of coping, that he is no longer a part of the Mormon church, which he really was staunched and really heavily into. Also grappling with the childhood trauma of growing up poor, having an addict father who was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and really trying to find his place in life. And I think he feels like this whole don't die, I'm the one who has the blueprint lifestyle is where he has his place. Because it's very interesting as this show goes on that you start to realize that this is somebody who I believe is grappling with the fact that he feels like he's running out of time to really maintain and spend time with the people that he feel like he lost time with by making the decisions that he has made, by leaving the church, by getting a divorce, by having a father who was an addict. It's interesting. It's also telling as well. So they then start talking about the whole plasma thing, and that's what really had the internet on 10, where there was this study of where they took an old mice and a young mice. They, I guess, conjoined them together where they shared organs, and they saw an increase in blood flow and health in the older mice, and nothing really happened to the younger mice. But now there's this idea out there that if you share plasma with someone that is younger than you, it can help start the re-aging process. So now Bryan is interested in doing this, but also wants his father to partake in it, because his father is also grappling with the fact that he is 70 years old and he is losing his faculties to a certain extent. So Ashland ends up explaining that Bryan isn't the first person who talked about doing the plasma situation, that there were several other people, a person by the name of Peter Tile, who also was a multimillionaire. I still think he's alive. But now it's this running joke in Silicon Valley that there are these multimillionaires out here looking for plasma boys or blood boys to help them siphon their youth, okay? And so Bryan asks his son, does he want to take part? And Talman says yes. So now we have this generational sharing of plasma where Bryan is giving his plasma to his father and Talman is giving his plasma to Bryan. Weird. And the father says that he was more hurt by people's reaction to it than angry with their reactions, because a lot of people had a lot of negative things to say. A lot of people did, including myself, okay? So then we get a little more backstory about Talman's father. And not Talman's father, but Bryan's dad, where that's when we find out that he was a drug addict and an alcoholic. He said there was times where he didn't know whether he should get a girlfriend or do a line of coke, whether go to church or go get some scotch. And, Bryan talks about when he was younger, he knew 95% of the time his dad wasn't going to show up in his life. He also says that, it was a hard thing for his family. And we find out that Bryan's parents got divorced when he was in his teenage years. And that kind of put a wrench in their relationship, because one, you're not showing up, now you're getting a divorce, which means you're not going to be around even more. And that was very much a struggle for Bryan. So this is the part where I kind of got irritated with the dad, because we find out around the time when Bryan turned 22, the daddy got arrested. And the dad was expecting Bryan to be mad at him or to shame him or chastise him, you got to get it together. But Bryan came to the jail with no, Dad, you can do this. You can beat this illness of addiction. And then the producers ends up asking, Richard, who is Bryan's dad, was Bryan the only person that came to the jail? And he was like, yeah. But he said it with an attitude other people should have came and visited him. And I got irritated, because I get irritated with people who fuck up really badly in their lives. And then when you're at your lowest, people are just supposed to show up for you when you haven't shown up for everybody else. Because he said it with such an attitude, nobody else came to see me. Well, Bryan told us 95% of the time you don't show up for other people. So why did you expect everybody else to show up for you? I was just annoyed by that. We then see the mom, and she gets very emotional. It seems like maybe Bryan has a better relationship with his dad than his mother, because she was talking about the struggles of like accepting Bryan for like who he is now and him not being a part of the church and things of that nature, and how like two people have to want to show up for it to work, but they never expounded upon that. So I'm just wondering, like, is he not in a good place with his mom? Like, what's going on with that? Now, I want to talk about this lawsuit with Bryan's ex-girlfriend, but I'm going to save that for the end. We end up seeing Talman graduate, which was really nice. That's when Bryan ends up saying that he doesn't fear death, he loves life. And then we enter in this new gene therapy that Bryan wants to do, where this is like an extreme de-aging therapy that is not done in the States, but it's mainly a different form is done here in the States, but it's used for bodybuilders to help them, like, you know, gain more muscle mass. And this is supposed to be more so, I feel like, more invasive, because we met another person, another doctor who was giving more insight. His name was Dr. Ryan, where he was basically saying that they, at his place, they do gene therapy, but it's an off-target gene therapy. It's not what Bryan is trying to do, where it's not supposed to like mess with your DNA, but it does have the potential to. And so a lot of people are now worried about Bryan doing this therapy because it does have the potential to cause like mutations and make you more susceptible to other things. We then get introduced to several other people, such as Mac Davis, who's the founder of Mini Circle. We then meet another person named Walter, who also is the chief scientific officer for Mini Circle. And we meet a lady by the name of Liz, who is the founder and CEO of Bivivia Science in the US. And they're all talking about gene therapy. More so with Mac and Walter, they're doing this gene therapy that's not regulated, and it's not in America, it's in the country of Honduras, in this free zone that allows for like scientific experimentation that isn't regulated. Now, I know that probably sounds confusing, but I was confused. So it was basically saying that they are allowed to do pretty much any medical, like, I guess, scientific treatment in this free zone, in this province in Honduras, that the Honduran government gives like that. That's a free zone. I said, world, I was like, huh? What? So basically, Bryan decides to fly over there and do it. And the guys are pretty much saying that like they don't know if it's going to be effective, but they want to try. And I was with Ashlyn when he said this shit is batshit crazy. Okay, he was like, this is the first time that I was looking at Bryan like, are you sure you want to do this? Because this is very risky. And what they're doing is called Florstranian gene therapy, which is mainly for bodybuilders, but this one's a little different, and it's supposed to increase your lifespan like 30 to 40%. But again, it has the ability to mutate your DNA, but they say that their process is reversible and there's like a kill switch versus the other. I don't know. When you start messing with your DNA, that's when you lost the plot for me. You lost the plot for me. See Bryan drop Talman off to college. They have this really emotional scene in Target that I thought was sweet. They were getting towels for him, and Bryan just starts crying, and Talman just starts to hug his dad and, you know, tells him it's going to be okay. And normally, I guess Bryan is a very closed off person with his emotions, but ever since Talman came back into his life, he's been very open with his emotions. And the dad starts talking, because we get this scene of Richard, Bryan's dad, talking about how, you know, my son doesn't see limits. I see limits. He doesn't see limits. And he says, you know, I feel as though this is Bryan's new religion. Like when Bryan was younger, he wanted to be like Joseph Smith, the, creator of Mormonism or founder of Mormonism. And now it seems like change is his aphrodisiac. People acknowledging this change is what is motivating him and moving him. Ashlyn talks about, like, he gave up one religion for another. He gave up Mormonism to have this new, don't die lifestyle. And he was like, sometimes he coins himself the health Jesus, and he prides himself about that. Then as the show continues, or the episode continues, it feels like it got a little cultish, because we now start to see that Bryan has these like don't die hikes. And when he first started, it was only 11 people. Now it's 400 people, and he's doing these seminars and all this stuff. And I said, okay. They then start talking about the American healthcare, which sucks. And like they said, healthcare is seen as to treat a disease when it happens instead of trying to stop it before it happens. And all healthcare needs to change. Even if you have free healthcare, there's still this perception of like you need to be sick for them to do anything. So in that regard, I don't fault them too much. I do think that the lifestyle that Bryan does live is very isolating, and I think his following is what gives him a sense of like family, because it doesn't seem like he's in contact with anybody other than like his dad and his son. It doesn't seem like he has that strong of a connection with his mom or his 3 children. Well, his other 2 children other than Talman. So I don't know. I don't think Bryan is wrong in a sense of wanting to live a healthier lifestyle, but his personality gives cult vibes. Like he gives that he's charismatic enough, and he's starting to gain such a following, and people are so invested in his every move that I could see this turning into a cult. Okay, I could definitely see this turning into a cult. What I really want to talk about, which is this lawsuit between Bryan and his girlfriend. Let's just finish out the whole gene therapy, because that's how the episode ended. So after Bryan did his gene therapy in Honduras, they have updates. They said 6 months after receiving the Florida strain gene therapy, Bryan's muscle mass increased by 7%. In February of 2024, Bryan returned to Honduras for another round of treatment. His father also joined him. So it seems like the gene therapy is working in a sense for Bryan when it comes to muscle mass, but I guess they would have to test to see if that is increasing his longevity or, his health in any way. Because just because your muscles get big don't really mean anything. Also, Bryan lets it be known that his blueprint or his pace of aging has dropped to 6.4. So earlier in the documentary, I think they said it was 6.9. So he is striving to get the lowest pace of aging to show that he has slowed down the aging process. Like I said, I wanted to save the lawsuit with his ex-girlfriend for the end of the video, because they did not do enough explaining for me. I was like, okay, y'all could have made this documentary a little extra, like 2 hours, if you was gonna give me an extra portion about this like abandonment $9 million lawsuit situation. So I had to do my own digging, and I want to read about it. But basically, let me set up the scene. We see Bryan and Talman working out in the gym. Bryan ends up telling his son like, hey, I was on a phone call date, and Talman is looking at his daddy like, what? You did what? Okay. And so Bryan ends up saying he actually liked being on the phone call with her, and he's planning on meeting up with her. And Talman said, well, good luck to her, because she gonna need it with you. So we end up finding out that Bryan sucks when it comes to building friendships or being in romantic relationships. He basically tells us that he tells people, I'm gonna give you 10 reasons why I'm a bad friend and why you will ultimately hate me by the end of this interaction. And I'm like, so you readily just tell people this? Okay. And here's the thing. When men or people in general tell you that up front, like, these are the reasons why you'll hate me as a friend or why you won't like me, then I take that as my get out of jail free card to leave you alone and stay away from you. Because men who do that in relationships oftentimes do that so when they do hurt you or harm you, it's like they can absolve themselves of responsibility for what they did to you, because they're like, well, I told you up front I'm not a good person, or I'm a bad friend, or I'm not a good boyfriend. So you are the person that's at fault because they told you that information up front, even though they're still in the wrong because you didn't have to do that to somebody. So then production ends up asking Bryan, like, well, do you think you'll ever change? And he says no. So I'm like, so if you don't plan on changing that behavior, then why are you actively seeking out women to date? Or to make platonic friendships or relationships when you know you're not a good friend. And granted, I understand it's because of his rigorous, 100 things he does every day to reverse the aging process. But if that is hindering you from living a lifestyle where you have companionship, whether it be romantic or platonic, then what you're doing is not healthy. But also, I feel like it makes you an asshole for knowing that you aren't a good friend to people and not trying to change that behavior. So Bryan brings up how, he was married at the age of 24. That was like his first real relationship. And then he gets divorced 30 years later. And I thought eventually Bryan was going to say that he was like bisexual or gay. I really did. Because I'm like, well, you're struggling so much with women. Or maybe I thought it's like, so legit, I thought either he was going to say he was asexual, bisexual, or just gay. That's all. I was like, okay, I'm okay. And he never said that. And then they drop on us this like breast cancer ex-girlfriend lawsuit. And I said, what is this? So they start talking about this lawsuit where Bryan was with this girl named Taryn. Mind you, Taryn looks exactly like Kate. Like when they showed Taryn, I was like, that look like Kate. That's why I feel like there might be something going on with Kate and Bryan, because I'm like, Bryan and Kate look like Kate and Taryn look the same. I said, oh, this is kind of weird. But they basically said that, well, what they showed in the documentary where Bryan said it wasn't true is that his girlfriend ended up getting diagnosed with breast cancer, and they tried to paint it out to be like he did all these horrible things to his ex Taryn, when that's not the case. So Taryn, after her and Bryan kind of broke up, went to a lawyer, one of the best lawyers in the country, and they basically told Bryan, if you don't send my client $9 million, we're going to court and we're going to sue. And so Bryan was like, I'm not going to be bullied. Do what you must. So they went to court, and I guess all of their court documents were made public. So then once the media got a hold of it, they started running the stories about their relationship. And basically the lady was saying that Bryan abandoned her once he found out that she had breast cancer. He said that that wasn't true, but they only gave, like, that was probably only like 5 minutes of this documentary. So I don't know if he telling the truth or she telling the truth, but I did find a People Magazine article and I want to read it. So let's read it. The article was posted by People Magazine on April the 20th, 2023. And the title goes, Entrepreneur spending $2 million to reverse aging, left fiancé after breast cancer diagnosis lawsuit. Bryan Johnson is denying claims made in a lawsuit brought by his former fiancé, Taryn Southern, including that he forced her out of their home they shared when she was getting cancer treatment. So it goes on to say, a wealthy entrepreneur who is spending millions to reverse the aging process and have the body of an 18-year-old has been accused by his former fiancée of leaving her after she was diagnosed with breast cancer and had given up a lucrative career to focus on his pursuit and their relationship, according to a lawsuit. See, girl, that's where y'all be messing up. Stop giving up your dreams for these bums. And when I mean bums, I mean whether he's a millionaire, a billionaire, or anything. Y'all got to stop doing that, because men show you every time they will discard you when they see fit. So stop doing it. Stop giving up your dreams for other people. So it says software entrepreneur Bryan Johnson, 45, and actress and content creator Taryn Southern, 36, had a whirlwind romance, according to the suit she filed in October of 2021, obtained by People. Southern recalled in the documents how her former fiancé swept her off her feet, taking her on lavish vacations, planning a forever future, and even dubbing her Mrs. Johnson within weeks of their meeting in 2016. Girl, that sounds like love bombing. Mm-mm-mm. By March of 2018, the pair was living together in Venice, California, and engaged to be married. Johnson promised to take care of her financially and medically for the rest of her life, she claims. However, a lifelong partnership with Johnson came with a steep price. Southern attorney alleged in the complaint, which was filed in the Superior Courts of California, County of Los Angeles, while repeatedly telling Miss Southern to stop worrying about money and promising to take care of her for the rest of her life, reads the document. Johnson demanded Miss Southern devote her time and creative energy to his personal needs and professional aspirations. This Southern's attorney's claim left her financially dependent on her former fiance when she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. In October of 2019, while Southern underwent chemotherapy, radiation, and other treatments, Johnson demanded that she move out of the home they had shared for 3 years, according to the lawsuit. By that point, Southern allegedly had no dependent source of steady income to pay for her growing medical bills and final states. She claims in the suit that Johnson pressured her to give up her career instead and devote her time to working for him for free on branding, business development, speech writing, and film production. When I tell you, that's low-key what Kate is doing, because when they asked Kate what she does, she couldn't even say in the documentary what she truly does. She was just like giddy and laughing. And then we find out that she's doing pretty much all of Bryan's social media. Girl, Kate was Tieran's replacement, because they never said when Kate and what's his name? Kate and Bryan met. They just said that they met, and it was like she just was really into the message she was. Girl, was that around the time that lady got breast cancer? Because I could see that. You know, people shiesty like that. Okay. So it says, by that point, Southern alleged that she had, no, I already said, okay. Johnson then took advantage of Mrs. Southern's weakness and vulnerable state and repeatedly leveraged his power and financial control over Miss Southern to try to get her to give up her rights and promise she was entitled to financial security and stability in the future, and specifically to share in the anticipated success of his startup company, reads the complaint. Southern has requested a jury trial and seeks millions in damages for emotional distress and financial losses, court records show. When reached by People, David Grimes, one of Southern's lawyers, did not comment due to the ongoing litigations. Johnson's, whose Project Blueprint aims to reverse aging process to every organ in his body reportedly with the help of more than 30 doctors at the cost of at least $2 million this year, responded to the former fiance's lawsuit on Monday. In the documents also reviewed by People, Johnson alleged that Southern's thoroughbred claims are baseless and that he doesn't owe her a dime. In the response to his ex myriad allegations, Johnson says Southern's claims are not only entirely false, but that she misses the 2-year statute of limitations for her claim. He also claims she isn't owed any damages whatsoever, and that she continues to maintain the relationship with him for several months after all the alleged events in Southern's suit took place. Throughout the time, she never raised any concern, Johnson's attorney stated in the response after the relationship ended. Southern reinitiated contact with Johnson to request money, but again did not allege that he had any legal obligations to her. The response continues. Johnson has also asked that the courts dismiss Southern's complaint and to compel her to pay his legal fees. I wonder if they ever came to some type of resolution. So I went digging to see if there was any information of how the lawsuit played out, whether she got her $9 million or if they had a settlement, but there was no article about it. So I don't know if it's a still ongoing situation or if they settled and she didn't get any money from it. But dang, girl, that man dumped you. And the thing about it is it's not too far-fetched to believe that he would dump her because she had breast cancer. It really isn't. Like, that man is so obsessed with health that I feel like her getting cancer, well, he was like, her getting sick and not being able to like help him in any way, I could definitely see that man leaving her. leaving her on the street and going about his business. And it doesn't help that she and the new girl, Kate, his, chief manager, look the same. And one of the articles I saw said that Bryan was out here cheating on Tyrion. It's a lot. It's a lot. That is it. That is all. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in them comments below and share your thoughts with me. Let me know if you've seen the documentary, if you plan on seeing the documentary, or if you know anything about, Blueprint and Don't Die movement, if you're a part of it. Let me know how you feel about it, all right? But remember to be bravely authentic, and I'm out, y'all. Deuces.